Welcome to the Carolyn Moore Writers House. My name is Justin Rigamonti, and I'm the program coordinator. Today we're talking with Mai Tran, a writer based in New York. Mai Tran is a genderqueer Vietnamese American writer. They were a winner of Epiphany Zine's 2020 Breakout 8 Writers Prize, and their work has appeared in Apogee, Vox, ID, The Rumpus, and elsewhere. They served as a nonfiction coordinator for MFA App Review and were a Poetry Coalition Fellow with Lambda Literary. So lots to talk about there. But I wanted to start by asking you, what's it like being a writer in New York? My brain knows it's not as glamorous as it seems, but my little Portland heart still thinks it sounds awfully glamorous. How is it? What's it like?
It's really good. There's a lot of good writing events, and people always talk about like MFA versus NYC. And I'm a big proponent of the NYC part. It's really easy to be in community, especially as an Asian person and a trans person. There's a lot of like niche little groups, and whenever I go to big AWP programs, I'm like, oh my God, who are all these random people? But in New York, it feels like very tight. It's also very unglamorous too. I just applied for apartments recently, and it was a nightmare experience.
That's cool to know that there's a good community there. I would have thought about it like an AWP event, I think. Glamorous people walking around all over, but... so you've written for a few different news outlets, and your stories often have to do with correction facilities, hate crime prevention, the rights of inmates. Especially right now, this feels like a politically polarizing subject. What's it been like reporting on subject matter like this?
I started doing reporting with incarcerated people in a really roundabout way. I was mostly writing personal essays in college, and then I started doing more reported op-eds after I graduated because I wanted to make money and try to work with bigger outlets, and I was also doing as told to interviews with people. So that's how I started getting interview skills and leaning more towards the mainstream media side. And then during 2020, during the George Floyd protests, I started writing to a lot of incarcerated people through pen pal programs, and some of the people I was connected to inside or in like the Black and Pink group, which is a pen pal group for queer and trans people in prison. They would post in the Facebook group and they would say, we need someone to report on this issue that this person is experiencing. So that's the first time I did it, and I wrote it for Mike, and it was a really bad experience on my part just because I had never done journalism before. So I didn't know how to fact check things. There's like a shorter news format, just like the whole writing of it was different for me. So it was a lot of learning on my own part, like reading a lot of Twitter threads about how to report and going to a lot of panels. So I came to it because incarcerated people had things that they wanted me to write about, and it wasn't like I was searching for it. But it's been a really good experience, and I'm connected to different organizations now, like PEN, Prison and Justice Writing, and Empowerment Avenue, and it's good to have a support system. So it's like, it's not a lot of pressure on you, and I also have a lot of relationships with people inside. Like I help an incarcerated artist, Juan Hernandez, publish his writing and his artwork, and we're also friends first instead of like meeting through an organization. So that's nice. Like we talk on the phone every day, and it feels, I feel like people think abolitionist organizing is very like depressing, but I've also met a lot of great people and found a lot of friendships through it, and it's mostly rewarding and not super depressing all the time, which is I feel like what people think it is.
So Quan is currently an inmate.
Yeah, in Illinois, and his work can be found at instagram.com/jch_convictedart. And he would be very mad at me if I talked about him and didn't plug his Instagram. He's always like, do the Instagram. So, yeah.
So do you run it for him?
I do run it. I have some like comms experience, which also came out of my incarcerated organizing. Like when I was in college, I thought if you wanted to be a writer with a day job, you could only go into publishing or editorial. But then I discovered comms, which I didn't really know about.
Comms as in communications. Okay. Wow, that's fascinating. So you've interviewed multiple folks inside via letter or also directly?
There's a lot of apps now like Connect Network and GTL where you can add someone who's inside and then email them, and it takes 1 to 3 days instead of snail mail.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it printed and given to them, or?
It is printed, and a lot of people have tablets now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's why I was using the printer. I have to send a lot of snail mail.
Oh, wow, okay. So you said you communicate with trans and queer writers inside. Mm-hmm. Do you also communicate with other Vietnamese writers inside, or?
I haven't personally been connected, but there's a lot of different groups who support Southeast Asian people specifically, because within the Asian community, a lot of Vietnamese and Southeast Asian people are disproportionately incarcerated because they came here as refugees, so they have different experiences, like more youth gangs back in the 90s. And a lot of Southeast Asians are being deported after they go to prison, so there's a lot of organizing around that. Like Asian Prisoner Support Committee does it, Minnesota 8, I think the group is called.
People who were citizens beforehand.
Yeah.
Or then, wow. So you kind of have the pulse of what needs to be talked about to these folks inside, and then you report on it. That's beautiful. That's really cool. As somebody who is Vietnamese, what's it, just again with the current milieu, what's it like being a AAPI writer in this country right now?
When I was first starting out, it felt like you had to navigate a lot of larger narratives. Like within the Asian diaspora, there's a lot of things that people talk about in narratives. Like a lot of people write about the Asian lunchbox experience.
What does that mean?
Like growing up, you would go to the cafeteria and bring your Asian food and everyone would laugh at you. So like that has become a big trope. And then like fruit as an act of care has also become a big trope. Like a lot of people write about their parents bringing them apples or mangoes instead of saying I love you. So when I was first starting out, it felt like I had to write around a lot of those narratives. Like since everyone's writing about fruit, I can never write about like mangoes ever again. So that is one thing that has been challenging, but it's also really nice that there are a lot of groups specifically for writers of particular ethnicities or races. Like DVAN has a lot of Vietnamese programming, and then there's places like Asian American Writers Workshop and Cave Canem, and Canto Mundo. All those groups have been really good.
That's amazing. Writing about politically loaded subjects, polarizing subjects. Have you encountered any angry responses to your writing?
Yeah, I wrote a personal essay for this like How I Got Radicalized series in Gen, which is now folded but used to be on Medium. I wrote about being a leftist/socialist when a lot of Vietnamese people are anti-communist because of their experience during the war. And I got a lot of comments on that, and then my publisher didn't really help because they put Ho Chi Minh as like the big photo, so it was kind of clickbaity. And I also learned that writers don't write their own headlines most of the time for mainstream media, so the headlines are always kind of clickbaity. I got a lot of not great comments on that one, mostly from like right-wing people, but I do a lot of like anti-doxing. There's a lot of anti-doxing trainings and things you can do to like wipe yourself off the internet, so I do that a lot.
Oh, for your own info.
Yeah.
I was thinking for the folks you interview, but for your own info, you have to do that. Well, yeah. Well, you mentioned headlines. You also do humor pieces, and on top of, the work you write about with the correctionals and the correctional institutions and the inmates, you do humor writing. And you write for Reductress, which bills itself tongue-in-cheek as women's news, feminized, and it's a parody site. Some titles of your pieces, which are funny in themselves, and so I'm curious if you wrote these. Brave, this woman psychoanalyzed her friends without a license. And then BIPOC woman encouraged to apply, learns to live off encouragement. What's it like writing humor, in pairing with this very politically charged material you write about, and how's that been? Do you enjoy that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good exercise in form. I started doing satire writing in college. We had a college satire publication, and we had to pitch 5 headlines a week and write 1 article a week, and it was a good exercise in just churning out writing and forcing yourself to think of jokes. I found humor writing isn't like essay writing where you can't just like throw things on the page and revise them later. It's like you have to think of a joke, so sometimes I'll just sit there for like 5 hours trying to think of 10 headlines. And you also have to try to be funny in the least amount of words possible.
I noticed they were short, yeah.
Yeah, so Reductress has a lot of different forms, and usually they like to have the joke in the headline, so you don't have to like read an entire article. Yeah, so it's been good in just forcing yourself to be funny.
That's fun. So then the article just sort of unfolds from the headline itself. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite can you think of one? I read a couple of my favorites. Satire
is also good if you're just like a hater in general, or if you just like if you're just a generally annoyed person. One of the first ones I ever wrote was I forget what it was exactly, but it was like a man who's only attracted to blondes forgot the word white. Because I hooked up with someone and he was like, I'm really into blondes, but obviously like that wasn't me. So I was like, why would you tell me that?
Well, you're working on an essay collection right now. I know that. And how's it going?
It's going well. I'm really bad at writing without a deadline. So it's been pretty slow for me, and I'm trying not to have all the publishing pressure of like writing a first book. I'm trying to think of it just as a long form project and breaking it down into chapters, which has been helpful.
And have you been working on that here?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Fragments, yeah.
I know you've been you've been meeting deadlines while you're here as well. What else have you been working on here at the house?
I just filed a news article about a new Southeast Asian curriculum that's being developed in California. They're the first state to mandate ethnic studies for all high school students, and they're creating specific curriculum on Native American studies, Vietnamese studies, and Cambodian and Hmong studies too.
Because those are large populations in the state. Yeah. That's fascinating. So you're genderqueer, and you advertise that in your bio. At PCC, we have a large queer non-binary population, many of whom are writers. Can you talk a little bit about being a queer writer, and especially as it might relate to young queer writers at PCC?
Yeah, I think it's been strange to be publishing writing since I was identifying as like a cis woman to being trans now. Like the piece I'm going to read and the one I think I sent you to classes, I think you sent to classes about breast cancer, and I got top surgery last year, so reading back you can like see where like, oh, I did want top surgery in 2020 even though I didn't know it yet. And yeah, I also came out as genderqueer after reading a lot of trans writing. There's a stand-up comedian who jokes about how your first gay experience is really exciting because it's usually like sexual or having a crush on someone, but coming out as trans is just a lot of journaling, and that really resonated with me. So yeah, trans literature has been really important for me personally, and I also work with the Lambda Literary Writers in Schools program, and it's a lot of queer and trans YA authors who talk about how right now is the best time for trans people, even though it's still really bad. There's like a lot of trans literature, so I see my trans-specific writing as contributing to that. And I think there's also a lot of like territory that hasn't been explored or published yet, so it feels like there's a lot of like ground to be broken.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit, for people who don't know, Lambda's a fantastic organization. Can you tell us a little bit about Lambda?
Yeah, it's a nonprofit that is remote, so it's all over the US, and we support queer and trans writers through the Lammy Awards, which happens every year and just turned 25 or 30 recently.
Wow. Wow.
So they have a long list of like queer romance sections or like gay memoir, gay poetry, trans poetry. That happens every June. We also have a writers retreat program every year where there are different faculty members and people can go learn from them and be in a cohort that has programming year round. And we also have the Writers in Schools program, which sends queer and trans authors to high schools in New York, and we're also trying to expand to LA soon.
That's fantastic. So do you have any advice for young queer writers?
Something I wish someone had told me when I was starting out as a nonfiction writer was to not publish everything about yourself, or to be selective and like keep some parts of yourself for the private.
For your own journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I first started writing in college, I didn't think anyone would ever read it, so I like shared a lot, but I'm like, maybe I don't want people to know that now.
Well, speaking of advice, what was the most helpful piece of advice you ever received as a beginning writer?
My old Lambda manager, Lakeisha Lewis, told me not to listen to any advice because like, you know yourself the best, and whatever works for you doesn't always work for other people, and vice versa. I also had a really good professor, Saeed Seyrafizadeh, who is my first writing teacher ever, and he told us that anyone could be a writer if you want to be. Like, it doesn't have to be your full-day job, you don't have to make money from it, but if you want to be a writer, you can be a writer. I think a lot of literary writing people also make it seem very hard. Like, you have to, I know some people say you have to like collect 100 rejections every year, but like,
Yep, I got that.
Yeah, I feel like it's not that hard, and especially like helping incarcerated writers publish their writing, like I feel like it's more useful to tell people that they can be writers if they want to be. I don't think it's as hard as people make it seem. It's just learning how like pitching works.
Can you tell us about your writing practice and maybe a little bit about writing here at the Writers' House?
Yeah, I'm definitely a deadline writer. I'm really bad with like procrastinating. I think some people also tell you to write every day. I definitely don't do that. And I think having a good work-life balance is good, but I like to work in a lot of different genres. I think that helps my essay writing. Like, I take a lot of poetry classes because I think they do super interesting things with form. They have like names for so many different kinds of poetry, and I'm like, yeah, that has helped with my nonfiction writing a lot because you can't really change the content of nonfiction, but you can change the form, which is when interesting things happen, I think. But yeah, I like to give myself deadlines, and I like to like bust out a draft in 8 hours because I am a procrastinator, so that's how my writing practice has developed.
Yeah, how does one give oneself deadlines for creative projects? That would be a good piece of advice somehow. Do you remember the moment when you knew you wanted to be a writer?
Definitely 2018 in Saeed's class. I wasn't really obsessed with school, and I think writing, there's always something to learn, and there's so many different forms. It was really interesting to me. And I was definitely a really precocious pitcher. Like, I just sent my writing everywhere, which maybe I should have been more selective now, but yeah, I think getting into the publishing thing was helpful, but also makes me more self-conscious about what I write.
Because there's those pieces online that you wish weren't online anymore.
Yeah, I've done wipes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That you write to the publisher and ask for it to be pulled down?
Yeah, mostly I used to write for Her Campus, which is like a college publication, and also The Black Sheep, which is my college satire thing. I was like, I don't want anyone to find this, actually.
Funny. Well, what have you enjoyed about being here at the Writers' House?
Writing in new places is always really good for me, or just writing anywhere where I don't have all my stuff around so I don't get distracted. Also, I had no idea the Portland climate was like this, and it's really nice. Like, my skin is clear, the air is clear. Yeah, I also really enjoyed Jessica's Earth Day writing in, and like, she took me to a book burlesque event, which felt very Portland, and it was really good.
Cool. Up in Portland?
Yeah, at the Alberta Theater.
Yeah, Alberta Rose Theater. Yeah, cool. Is there a favorite writer right now that...
I really like Leslie Jameson's work, her essays.
Yeah. Oh, her essays. I've just read her poems. Did she write poems? No.
I think so, probably.
Maybe.
She does everything.
Okay, so tell us about...
Yeah, she just does personal essays combined with original reporting. Like, in one of her books, she wrote an essay about a blue whale, like just about a blue whale, and it was really good.
That's great. Okay. Well, you've kind of talked about this already, but Carolyn was a dedicated poet. Carolyn Moore was a dedicated poet. She constantly sent out work. And for her, the hustle paid off. She won over 60 awards and honors for her writing. What capacity is writing a hustle for you?
Money-wise, I don't think about the money anymore because I'm like, let's just not factor that in. I think writing is part of every job that I do, like communications and also organizing and being a program coordinator for Lambda Literary. So yeah, I enjoy doing writing adjacent things, and I'm also not sensitive about sending my work out anymore. Like, every time I see an application, I'll do it. I actually had to set boundaries for myself to not apply for everything and to like let things go too. So yeah, I think if you just send a lot of things out, it will not feel so personal. And also being on like different selection committees for things.
Yeah.
Because I know it's not always about like the person, but sometimes it's about the fit, and that helps.
Well, we're really glad you applied here. What made you decide to apply?
It was a really easy application. Like,
that helps.
Sometimes people require letters of rec. That will turn me off, and then I won't do it. And I had never been in this area before. Cool.
Yeah, we're all about accessibility since it's, PCC, a community college, and I'm glad that got you here. We also wanted to have you read a piece, an excerpt. Maybe, do you have something selected?
Yeah, I was going to do the variants of unknown significance beginning.
Yeah.
4 3 minutes.
Love that essay. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
I've never read
4
it.
minutes, you said?
I think it will be 3-ish.
Okay.
Okay. My gynecologist won't stop bothering me about getting a genetic test done. I don't see how knowing or not knowing will make a difference. My mammograms will start at 25 anyhow, and you didn't have any mutations but were still afflicted. In the worst case scenario, they'll tell me to get a mastectomy, but I think it might be nice to have a flat chest, to wear swimsuits that actually fit, to exercise without impediment, have the globules of fat shaved off with a cutting wire. At least that's how I imagine it, a clean cut, the doctor or ceramist removing blocks of clay. I rarely wear bras. I always wondered why you wore one despite the negative space. Maybe to retain some femininity, maybe to cover the scars purpled with age, maybe because you thought all women should wear one regardless of necessity. I cannot remember a time when you weren't flat. I study old photographs, try to decipher if your size was similar to mine. When my grandmother asked for help buttoning her blouses, I glance between the folds and try to fill in the gaps. It takes 3 months to get an appointment with a genetic counselor, and on the specified morning, I oversleep. Another 3 months pass, and I am finally in the waiting room surrounded by pregnant women, my own uterus happily hollow. I go to the bathroom and open the door to an impending mother, her eyes frantic with the need to release something. Everything about her is swollen, including her chest, and I wonder if it feels like puberty pain or another kind I might never know. The geneticist comes to collect me. Her hair is thinning and her back is stooped, and she carries herself with the humble regality of a famous author. In the office, there are newspaper clippings of her research and conferences, but mostly I notice that there are no pink ribbons, so I think I might trust her. She asks me questions and makes a chart of my family tree, but we can't get further than my grandparents, because anyone older had been lost. When I was 16 and applying for a driver's license, the form asked if I wanted to be an organ donor. The last time I asked you about it, after health class, you said, never donate your organs. Why? I'll tell you when you're older. But then I was older and you had never told me, so I thought, oh well, and checked the box. My ID printed with a pink donor circle, although I imagine no one will want my body parts if my test comes out in a certain way. No point in harvesting spoiled fruit.
Thank you. And that was from Variants of Unknown Significance, published where?
On the Rumpus.
On the Rumpus, yeah. Well, thank you so much. I hope the last few days here are great for you. I really do. Thanks so much for joining us today at the Carolyn Moore Writers House for our talk with Mai Tran. And thank you again, Mai.